I have had a crazy long day, and I'm kind of a mess. uh, just 3 appointments today, some out of state, all over the place. And I didn't even, but if I don't record even when I'm a mess, I'd never record. So, here I am, and I didn't even clean up behind me. So there's piles of kid stuff, guitars and blankets and pillows. And oh my. I'm sure you don't mind. Or at least you recognize the kid piles and clutter. So, years and years ago, probably 17 years ago now, before I was actually a knitter, when my big boys were very little boys, I had a friend, and she came to a party wearing this sweater that looked clearly handmade. It was beautiful, made out of this just fluffy mohair yarn, looked hand-dyed. So when I asked her about it, and she told me about a friend of hers, a Quaker woman who liked to knit as prayer, and how she had knitted that sweater when she was kind of coping with and coming to terms with having a hysterectomy. And so the sweater was all shades of pink and red. And and she stood up to and said, "See, I'm like a uterus." And so when she was done with it, she gave it to this friend of mine who was a midwife. And then she went on to tell me about how the same woman, when there was conflict in an area, when there was a war raging, how she would take yarns from one of the places, and a yarn from one of the places and a yarn from the other place, and knit them together as she prayed for peace. And that just stuck with me. Both of those stories, I just thought that was just so beautiful. And that was ages ago. So, but that has stuck with me all this time. And so recently I was asked to knit some prayer shawls. And it turns out the prayer shawls that we're looking for happen to be for friends of mine. So I was actually really grateful for this opportunity. Really grateful. I feel like I'm so glad I was asked. It feels like something that it was a gift for me to be asked. I really want to do this project. I want to send some love and good loving intention and thoughts to these two dear women. So the church had a collection of yarn that they use for prayer shawls, and I guess the people who were knitting them before aren't really doing it anymore, aren't around, or members of the church anymore. So I went and picked out my yarn. They use acrylic yarn because so that it can be easy wash for people who are ill, which makes sense. It's not my usual. None of it's my usual yarn. In a lot of ways, it's heavier weight, and I'm looking at the yarn as if you're in the room with me and can tell what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the yarn. So it's a heavier weight, different fiber content, obviously, and just really different, not necessarily the colors I would have chosen, but I went and I picked it out. So the one wool, the woman that I'm very close to, she's a dear friend of mine. I was trying to think of what would suit them. I didn't want to just do something at random. It was important to me that that it fit them in a way, style-wise. So the one woman who is a very close dear friend of mine, she has kind of a very, both women are artists, wonderful artists, and both, gosh, lovely, fascinating, unique. Anyhow, so the one has a very kind of down-to-earth, organic sort of style. She likes natural fibers. She has a little bit of a kind of funky bent at times. Really, really beautiful. I'm having trouble putting it into words. A little bit to the rustic side, but not in like an overpowering or masculine sort of way, but more in a wabi-sabi sort of imperfections can be beautiful sort of way. And of course, for both of these women, this is just kind of my idea of how I kind of see their sense of style, and they may define themselves entirely differently. That's kind of my idea. So I found these two giant, like that, balls of yarn. And they were in kind of a natural color with flecks of brown and black. And it's a really bulky yarn. I think it may be the bulkiest yarn I've ever knit with. But it had these cool and beautiful irregularities. And I really liked it, and I really liked it. It felt like the best choice by far for her, and I liked a lot of the qualities of it. And actually has some wool in it, which I also liked. It's not all acrylic, and it seems more like wool than the other ones that were kind of shiny and, definitely you can tell even from a distance that they're not. Anyhow, I picked it up Friday. I picked up the wool Friday, or not wool, the partial wool Friday. Today is Monday night, and I cast off on this shawl. I don't know. I'm gonna have to get some pictures in daylight because I know you can't really see it well, I'm sure. But it's a giant triangle. I'm not done. I'm going to do some more stuff to it, and I actually think I might buy another ball of yarn and continue knitting it and make it even bigger. I will say that about the bulky yarn, it knits up fast. So all I did for this was I cast on 3 stitches, and then each row I knit a stitch, yarn overed, and then knit across the end of the row. I did that every single row. So then I've got the little eyelets along this edge, and I'm going to do some fringe in those eyelets. So that's all I did, super simple. As noted, I've had a lot of time in the car. That's where a lot of this knitting took place. This is how big it is now. Not now. Yeah, I can't stand all the way up. I can't sit all the way down. It kind of gives you an idea. I think I might make it bigger because I don't really see her wearing it out and about. I don't really see that being a thing. But the way I was picturing it as I was working on it was she has two young children, and I saw it as something that was, thrown over the back of the couch, and then could come and sit, and one little one could be on either side, and they could read a book, and it could wrap around everybody. That's kind of the way I was seeing it, and I don't think it's big enough for that. So I think I may just look at the ball band, look up the yarn, and get another. And since it's so kind of uneven and slubby and naturally I'm hoping that it'll still match alright, even if it's a different dye lot. I think that's what I'm going to do. I would like to have it done quickly, but yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. And I will show you it when it's done and in daylight. But I lost my train of thought. What was I going to say? Oh yes, so I feel like there's I dropped all of my other knitting projects for this. I have a bunch of stuff going on, but I felt like this needed to take precedence, and I still feel like it should be done fairly quickly, but I don't want to rush the quality of it in that process. I mean, yes, I could work in the ends and say this is done just as it is, but there's actually multiple things I still want to do to it, including making it longer. So the second one I haven't cast on yet because I've been planning it. So the second woman is actually the first woman's mother, and she's really elegant and kind of classic, and I always, in my head, I picture her as always being in jewel tones, like beautiful, vivid colors, but not overly bright, just deep and rich. One of the pictures I have in my head when I think of her is having been in her bedroom that there's like a dressing table, dresser kind of thing, and the top of it's covered in her jewelry. In this just beautiful display, the way they're laid out, all different colors, and not kind of pretentious jewelry, more artisan, beautiful, glass beads, kind of things that have sculptural quality, and a lot of really beautiful, rich, deep colors. Also scarves, she wears a lot of scarves that are like silk scarves and things of that nature with beautiful colors. So kind of a very different feel style-wise. And so what I ended up doing with her, there wasn't anything I loved for her there. But I ended up with this yarn, and I don't know if you'll be able to see the color at all, and you really can't. Not very well anyway. But it's shades of blue mostly, some purples, there's a bit of rose in there, a bit of gold in there, and then twisted around the yarn there's so the yarn itself is one color, and then there's kind of in the twist kind of a teal sort of color. So this is what I went with for her, and let's see, it's Lion Brand Homespun Stripes. So it'll be interesting to see how that knits up. I finally came up with what I wanted to do. I've been thinking on it for a few days now, so since Friday, which is when I was asked and when I picked up the yarn, and going back and forth. And one of the things that I really wanted to do was I like the idea of adding beads to it. So this is what I got. I have these beads, and they're kind of different colors, and I think they'll look nice with it. They're too big to go on this yarn, but I also got a spool of just plain black crochet cotton, super thin, and I've been it's all tangled, but I've been beading them. I've been putting the beads on it. So I think I have 175 on this. And what I want to do, and it's just a theory, I don't know if it's going to work, is hold this together with the other yarn and knit just the ends with this yarn and the beading, and then the center do something else. So the center will be more plain because I don't want it to be uncomfortable. I don't want it to be like something you couldn't lean back in or lay down in and have like beads poking into. But I want it to have kind of a really pretty special quality with a little fancier element. So I thought if I just did that at the ends with a little lace work and then did something plainer in the middle, but I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to place the beads with the double yarn, if I'm going to be able to place the beads in the front so that they can be seen. I don't know. So now that I've bound off that one and I'm going to have to wait for more yarn, I'll start experimenting with this. So probably tonight or tomorrow I'll start experimenting with it and we will see. So the other part of what I'm doing is I'm going to use this yarn, and also I bought another little just acrylic plain black yarn, super plain yarn. And I'm going to use both of these to do the fringe on the first shawl, because I want them to be beautifully unique, completely unique and different, and beautiful in their own way, but I like the idea of the shawls for mother and daughter sharing a common thread, sharing yarn, still being connected, still having a sense of coming from the same place. I really want it to be a piece of something that carried over between the two of them, even though I wanted them to each fit the personality of the recipient. So that is what I am working on now. And when I'm done, I will show you how all of my experimenting turned out. So wish me luck. Until then. Ooh. Gosh. Told you I'm a mess tonight. It's my beading. Good night. The pair of shawls have been done for over 2 weeks now. I'm not sure why I'm choosing this moment to talk about them. I wasn't sure I was going to talk about them at all. I wasn't sure that I was going to finish making this video. From the time that I cast on for this project, in between that time and the time that it was finished, circumstances changed drastically. It's been a really emotional several weeks. A lot of people in our community, a lot of people that we care about very deeply, have had problems with medical issues and really traumatic experiences and all sorts of uncertainty and all kinds of things. It's been very emotional. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure that it was right to share this story because it's so personal, not just for me, but for several people, deeply personal, and not entirely my story to tell. But I've been thinking about it a lot. And one of the things that I've been thinking is that we live in a society so much value is put on the superficial, on the pretty unrealistic pictures, on just showing moments of perfection that don't have any context in reality. And that's just not real life. And maybe if people shared more of the stuff that really mattered, the raw, the vulnerable, the beauty in the darkness, and the perfectly imperfect, maybe this world would be a better place. So I'm sitting here, it's the middle of the night. I can't sleep. And why I'm choosing to do this right this moment, I couldn't say, other than I guess it's on my mind. As I said, circumstances changed drastically while I was working on the shawls. One of the women passed on before I was able to gift her the shawl. Hours before it was supposed to be delivered to her, actually. And her passing was merciful. She went on her terms. I was not there, but I'm told that there was great beauty and as much peace as possible in that moment. But it's obviously still very sad. It's, yeah, very sad. I don't have the shells with me anymore. I did take some pictures of them and I will add them to the end of this video. The shell that was meant for her went to her little granddaughter, who's Seraphina's age and Seraphina's friend. And she's been sleeping under it at night and wearing it about with a pin, holding it on. And I was told by a mutual friend that she told them that that it has brought her a lot of comfort, that it brings her so much comfort. And the little girl told me that she thinks it brings her luck. So maybe it ended up in the right hands after all. Maybe that's the way it was supposed to be. I don't know. The experience of working on these shawls was sometimes really intense. It was emotional. It was also powerful. To be in a situation where you're watching people that you love suffer and there's nothing that you can do about it, to have something to do is really kind of empowering in a way. So from that point of view, I highly recommend it. I prayed a lot while working on them. I sang some prayerful songs. And just a lot of times just tried to hold the people in my thoughts and my heart while I worked. I worked on one of them in church the last day that I was finishing it up. I don't normally knit in church. It's one of the few places I don't knit because I like to just sit and be fully present in the stillness. It's kind of my one day of the week to have some stillness. But there was a guest speaker that day, and the message was deep caring in the sacred presence of suffering. And it just seemed really fitting. It was a really very moving service, very beautiful, very touching. So I worked on it in and out of that, and at the end I asked that she be included in the prayer at the end, and she was. So the whole church was praying for her, and I finished the shawl up later that day, and she passed on later that evening. So that's part of that story, at least as much as I feel comfortable telling, because kind of beyond those boundaries, it's not my story to tell. I put out a few weeks ago, actually, just after I'd started this project, I kind of put out feelers asking if other people might be interested in doing this kind of work. I kind of like the idea of a group of people getting together maybe once a month with this purpose, to think of those who are in need in the community, those who could use a little help and comfort and support. And I got several responses, so I think that might be something that I pursue. I think that might be something I try to organize. A lot of the people barely knit or don't know how to knit at all. I like teaching people to knit, so it'll be an interesting experience. The one thing that will be the one thing I'm having trouble kind of integrating in my mind is that all of the prayer shawls that I've knitted to date were specifically for specific people, and I knew who. I knew them well, and I knew the circumstances. And I kind of worked with all of those things while I was working on them. And I'm not sure how to handle, because it would be more like knitting up kind of a stock of them to have for if something comes up, which is much less personal. And I'm not sure how to handle that exactly. And so one of the things I was trying to think of was, in almost any situation, what would you want for somebody who was suffering? For somebody who was struggling? And what I came up with that was true across all the ones that I have worked on, and that seems like it would be the truest for most situations I can come up with, or all situations I can come up with really, is peace. So I think that I will try to knit peace into our shawls. Deep, deep peace.